Podcast excellence since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts radio network, kingofpodcasts.com.
Single young women want to stay single, and they also have to keep no strings attached.
We are all a little depraved and debaucherous. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Welcome to the program. This is King of Podcasts here with you. Thanks for listening to the program. Thanks for finding the show wherever you find it, whether it's the YouTube channel at King of Podcasts or the website kingofpodcasts.com. And of course, if you haven't done so, I'm on here every Tuesday night recording this program, and you can go ahead and subscribe either through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, among other places. And click in there. Please feel free to comment, like, share, subscribe, and never miss an episode, because it's always fun on here. And, I always like to have a little bit of feedback, and I like to keep everything topic-centric for those out there. Just there's always a very interesting conversation we have each and every week here, and I want to have that conversation to be open for folks out there. Now, a couple things that came across my feed that I thought I would bring up when it comes to single young women. I've gone to this right here. Let's talk about modern women. When we know that, years ago, the idea would be if there were single young women, professionals, entrepreneurs, they were, in the modern world, career women. There was a point where, you go have your fun, teens, 20s, and then you want to eventually settle with someone that will, complement your life, a soulmate. And then you go ahead and come into the fact that, trying to do things on your own, well, it's very tough to do that. To figure out the idea that where a lot of women, look, I'm down here in South Florida, it's very common for a lot of young modern women to be living alone. And, if they have anybody that's a companion with them, it's usually like a pet, usually a dog or a cat. Nothing much else. But men or just a significant other, not really in the equation. If there is at all, keep it either one night stands, situationships, F-buddies, however you want to call it, no strings attached whatsoever. And there's something to be said about the women that choose to go this route because of the fact they want to have their independence, their freedom, but it's also to a detriment. The idea that are brought into their head by mothers or aunts or other women that they find as peers, or what they see on social media and what they feel like their fear of missing out of living a life they want to go and live and enjoy their youth, enjoy their beauty, and feel like it's going to be there forever. Well, that doesn't stay like that. There is a point where you can't sustain that kind of lifestyle, and you're missing out on things that you could want to have in your life. Now, I'm not here to go ahead and advocate for the fact that saying, you need to go and be married with children. No. But those are options that are, if you think about it, they should be for the good. Look, I'm not a person that got to be married with children either. Okay. But also for me, I was very picky about the fact that if I'm going to have anybody in my life that I was going to settle down with, one of the things that I never talk about much is that, if there were options of women to be with and to stay with for a significant amount of time and just say, you know what, I could go ahead and end up marrying them. I think there were opportunities that were there, possibly, that were not choices that I wanted to make because there were certain choices as to why not. One of the most important things were for me is, coming from the family I come from, was an extended family at the time, that I didn't want to just bring anyone into the family. It's one thing for someone to go and love me, but it was also, first and foremost, someone that'll love me back. Second, someone that I can incorporate into my family, because my family is very important to me. I love them very much. And I want to make sure that I don't want to bring somebody in that shakes everything up, because I know how that works out. And, we've had people that have come into the family that, we get to know, and they go away because, the relationship that was created from it, that goes away. Like, I have so many cousins that unfortunately they've gone through divorce in their 20s because they decided to go and find someone in their life. And we all got to meet with them, and, we had fun, getting to know everybody. But I can't tell you how many times I knew in-laws that, they got married and it never worked out and everything just changed. But that's what happens with it, and I'm not going to go and tell anything about family, about what they're going to do with themselves and who they're going to be with. But there was a lot of divorces going on. So there's part of the thing for that part in the 90s that made me say, well, I got to be very, very wary about who I'm going to go and be dating. And the other thing was looking at other people and the relationships that they had because of the change in the mindset and the mentality now where, wasn't that many decades ago that before we really got into this career modern woman mindset that I saw were girls that I knew, around my age, younger, a little bit older, they were still trying to get into relationships, into marriages, but because of what they wanted out of the relationship, they felt like they weren't going to get. And the mentality of not trying to make a relationship or a marriage work was no longer an option. Like even before social media, that value was already thrown out the window. And so social media made it worse. We all know that. But now we're at the point where the modern woman mindset and where we are with things now, if they don't get to be married, they don't get to have children, they don't get to enjoy themselves, it's not as if you can't just go out and enjoy your life. Absolutely you can, but there is a point where we all talk about settling down, but nobody wants to do that. They feel like settling down is not an option here. And there's a reason why. Part of it being social media, part of it being dating apps, and more excuses to create things that'll happen where you're never going to meet anybody in person. And you're never going to go ahead and take enough time to date to find the right person. But now I have so many different things that tell me, like, even if I tried to date now, it would be near impossible to find somebody that really complements what I'm looking for. Which is why the other thing is with many men, they're realizing, well, maybe we can't even find the woman we're looking for here in America. We have to go abroad. Passport bro it. And trust me, when I have been online and on dating apps or sugar daddy sites, and I talk to women from overseas, very clear the cultural differences, the traditional differences for the women that are in other countries around the world. And listen, you can talk about anywhere. You don't even necessarily have to go and say, oh, you're going to go to Philippines or Thailand, or you're going to go to, Dominican Republic, or you're going to go to Russia to go find a mail order bride. I know you want to go and say that, fine. But the truth is, from talking to women in different backgrounds, successful women, also career-minded, but also traditional in the same sense, that they're also just looking for someone to go and be with. Pick a country in Europe, pick a country in Asia, pick a country in South America, and you'll find women, eligible bachelorettes, that provide so much. And remember, the things that a man will want to go ahead and appreciate, a woman that is a provider, that is not just provider, but like a supporter, that wants to help make a great home, wants to be, raise wonderful children and have a wonderful life together. And for us to be the supporters, the providers, leading the charge, protecting, loving, and giving as much as we can of ourselves, and giving as much as who we are to the women in our lives, with a woman that will appreciate that and appreciate us, and that love that increases and grows and festers. It becomes something where that love is so strong, nothing can break it. There are no arguments. There are no little excuses or reasons or little mindsets that you can't find a way to overcome. But that's been thrown out the window. Like, nobody wants to go and even look that deep into a relationship. It's as if, and I understand part of it is too, is that for women, it would be difficult for them to go through things that they've gone through, some particular traumatic issues, or they've gone through some really bad relationships where that kind of mindset's gone, because it's like the men and how they're being raised today, the younger men, they're not as masculine as they once were before. There's something about that. The men are not learning on how to be proper gentlemen and knowing how to go ahead and at the same time respect a woman, but also know the boundaries of, what kind of a person you're going to be, that you don't need to be stepped all over. You don't need to be the person that's going to thriftily spend all your money on a woman to try to get her to curry favor with you. You don't need to do that either. There's a balance in all this. And now we get women that talk like this. Well, Cosmopolitan put out a story, and Killa Kib, who I forget who I talked to. I think it was Elizabeth Chambry over on Cannabis Radio, on one of the programs there, Grassroots Marketing. I remember she does a lot of writing, and I noticed she did some work with InsideHook.com. Well, Kayla Kibb also writes apparently for Cosmopolitan. I didn't know that. But anyway, I saw a story here that she wrote, and like I said, when she talks about sex relationships, I always love her articles because she's always great about it. She wrote a story, I don't know if I can afford to be single. And she talks about her romantic freedom comes at a pretty steep price. So taking the story from this, and she says that two things I definitely hope I'll be by 27 are financially and mentally stable. Unfortunately, if unsurprisingly, I am still broke and insane. Kayla's a young, beautiful woman, and smart. I always, like I said, I've read a lot of her articles. I enjoy reading what she writes, and, I think she got a pretty good open mind on a lot of things. So I was curious what she was going to say about this. Now, she suffers, she says, from the usual economic ills of your typical ungenerationally wealthy zillennial who insists on living in one of the most infamously expensive cities in the world, exorbitant student debt, inflation, pretty much everything about life under late-stage capitalism, coupled with a hedonistic streak that has been wonderful for my career as a self-indulgent artist, with enough decadently debauched experiences to fill a sex column and disastrous to my well-being on most of their accounts. But in recent years, as friends my own age have begun to lap me in big life events that come with big price tags, it becomes increasingly hard to ignore another factor working to my financial disadvantage. I'm single, and I have been for the majority of my adult life. Right, so talking about the fact that, and I can tell you as experience as a Uber driver, how many times I have taken girls around that have come to South Florida for weddings, and it's a bachelorette party. So 4 or 5 girls take up an Airbnb, they're going out on the town, and they're going to every bar they can go to wherever in South Florida and getting driven around. Plus, the club atmosphere or the bar atmosphere or the strip club atmosphere for South Florida as well, going along and seeing what there is in terms of the amount of money being spent and the kind of things that are going on when it comes to, say, if one of your girlfriends are having a baby or getting married, and other, like you said, big life events that are going on. She writes that one thing you'll really find the author of any Today Bury My Best Friend Instagram caption is willing to admit that their relationship is likely, at least to some degree, physically convenient, if not downright lucrative. But it's a bit of an open secret that while society decrees, and in some cases actively polices, blurring the lines between love and money, which of course I mean sex and money, remaining structured in a way that financially rewards romantic partnership, particularly the legal, governmentally recognized variety. From tax benefits to the possibility of finally clearing the wage gap by saying I do to a man's salary, the allure of patriarchally sanctioned partnership is strong. Don't worry, it's designed that way. Okay, but the part is too is that when it comes to a woman being single and wanting to live her own life, one of my best episodes that I did on this program talked about the issues of single women trying to go and make it on their own and the financial struggles they're having with it, which is why there are quite a few women that I noticed in my own experiences that is the reason they went onto a sugar daddy site in the first place. As I said, 70% of women, if you had to give me an estimate, I would say 70% of women on those sugar daddy sites are just looking for somebody to go and help supplement their income, supplement their lifestyle. Otherwise, the other 30% are just cash grab, or basically escorts or hookers or whatever it might be. That's really what I see on that. And that's the part where, with some of the women that decide, well, there are certain things they need to go and do to help supplement their income. If it's not sugar daddy sites, what if it's not even the route of like going to a strip club or working at one or being an adult entertainer or being whatever. It's OnlyFans, which in the pandemic became one option that a lot of women would go into and pursue because they were stuck at home, hibernating basically in lockdown. So that idea was one thought option. And then some women just decided to go and continue to do that. But it's like, very saturated atmosphere, and women might take the option of using their youth and beauty to get ahead. And she goes on to talk about that. She's not talking about old-fashioned gold digging. She says you don't have to be someone who makes significantly more than you have to reap the financial rewards of the relationship. It's whether splitting expenses or sharing streaming logins with a simple safety net of knowing that if you get laid off tomorrow, you won't wind up couch surfing or begging a reluctant roommate to cover your share of the rent this month. No two couples share finances exactly the same, but let's put it this way. I may not be good with money, but even if I didn't need those TikTok dinks to tell me that two incomes are better than one. The ones that are like, okay, two incomes, no child, all those kind of things, there's all that kind of thing. The part is that there must be something going on about where Kayla's talking about the fact that she has lived a somewhat depraved and debaucherous lifestyle to a point while exploring herself and exploring things and living her best life and being independent, but also knowing that there are ramifications behind it. And again, living in one of the most elaborate cities in the world, New York City, and trying to go ahead and, continue to live that part. It's very difficult. And again, student debt, various issues that if there was a man in a life and there was a two-person income sustaining things, that would make a big difference. But not a lot of people are going to want to live with somebody else. And that's the part where, what are you going to do with that? And also remember, which is why we talk about the fact that there are those that are looking for no strings attached. Let's just be honest. We know there are a lot of things right now when it comes to no strings attached or situationships. Those are financially driven. Pretty clear that. And what are you going to do about that? It's like, well, there are women that are willing to go ahead and say, well, they want to be able to go and get together with somebody. So again, they're complementing maybe a sex drive they might have, but they're also might be using it just to go ahead and get something to go ahead and get a return on the time spent because they're trying to go ahead and look out for themselves. Part of that. She goes on to write that 27 is struggling to shove my mounting debt, dwindling savings, and stagnating salary under the metaphorical mattress where I used to stuff cash men left for me on nightstands or slipped under restaurant tables. I've begun to wonder whether, like my indebted liberal arts degree and flashy low-paying media career, staying single is a luxury I've claimed but I can't actually afford. Now she goes on to talk about the fact that maybe that we don't have the advantage of saving on rent by moving in with fiancés who make at least 4 times what we do. But she says about her roommate, when they rehashed the conversation for the 600th or 700th time, wine drunk in the millennial pink kitchen we've shared for 4 years, while costs have skyrocketed, our salaries have inched. At least we're independent. And that's the part that everybody feels like is this kind of idea. So she goes on about it. Independence and marriage to men is a threat. To feel a bit reductive, a shallow, girl-powered grasp at I don't need a man brand of feminism that seems dated at best. I am interested in how she decided to go ahead and bring this up like this. So, and I don't mean a man brand of feminism, but that trope right there, it's prominent and it is encouraged and it is broadcasted by various Instagram influencers, TikTok influencers, and a lot of people online on social media that say, well, here's why I'm still doing what I want. But we never know about what things have to be done in order to sustain that income. Not every woman's going to go ahead and be able to make the income that will warrant being able to go and do what they want. We're also not talking about for those that how many of these women might not successfully make it all the way up to 27 years old like Kayla did because they might have in one of their one night stands or situationships or with somebody they were with in a relationship, they got to be a single mom. They got pregnant. And now if there is somebody else that they're living with, it's their kids. And try to go ahead and work off of that and your student debt and your other issues. She's talking about the fact that just being her alone and she has a roommate and it's still difficult. After all, we ladies love to pretend we're past all that, especially when it comes to the diamond rings and viral TikTok weddings. We can't help but seem to help ourselves from wanting. Marriage doesn't damn us to a life of self-medicated housewifery anymore, right? We can carry a man and still maintain our autonomy, can't we? Haven't you heard? Yet another friend's diamond winks from yet another engagement announcement. They changed the rules. Women could really have it all now. But I know exactly what my roommate means. At least some man can't topple my entire world on a whim. Because if tying your life to a man can be financially fruitful, it can also be dangerous, she says. Don't we all sneeringly speculate over what happens to the stay-at-home girlfriends after the breakup? Have we seen all the crash and relapse too many times to justify the high? Friends of friends who have been ceremoniously dumped by a long-term partner only to take him back within a matter of months because they're still living in his apartment and already working 2 jobs. And what are they supposed to do when the lease is up? More moving with roommates at 31? Start their whole lives from scratch? So we traded our freedom, the futures, our lives we could have led or fucked up or grown from apartments we couldn't afford on our own, and some double taps on thousands of dollars of wedding photography. So it's interesting on how she kind of goes with this. Now, she says, in one part, she says, if sex work was my sword, my way of seizing and wielding something the world was built to weaponize against me. Talked about having an account on seeking arrangement. What did I say? Early in her undergrad career, after reading an article on Cosmo, no less, about the potentially high-paying extracurricular activity. So Kayla, young, beautiful thing, took her attempt as a sugar baby. Maybe not necessarily as a sugar baby, but as I said, more towards the 70%, that it maybe might be something that would be a little more financially helpful. Again, she says it herself. Extracurricular, high-paying. So she writes then, here I was, of legal everything but renting a car and running for president age, very single and far too broken to date for real. Besides, I was about to graduate with 6 figures of student debt and big dreams of landing a notoriously competitive job and a notoriously underpaid industry in a notoriously expensive city. I figured some extra cash couldn't hurt. From a moment a married man in his late 40s pulled outside my dorm in his red Jaguar while the boys' lacrosse team gawked from practice across the way, sugar dating made me feel powerful in all the ways that regular dating made me feel weak. After years of feeling used and bruised by men I'd love or tried to love and coming up empty-handed, I was finally in a position to ask for what I wanted rather than just take what I get. If youth and beauty were my armor, then sex work was my sword, as she said. Now, she goes on, I would tell you, go look for the story in Cosmo because the story is fascinating. I'm not giving it enough credence, but like I said, go ahead and read through the story because she goes through a lot here. But I'm going to just move along now and talk about where she says here that sugar dating felt like the antidote, the golden ticket, the secret passageway that would lead me to a safe haven far from the equally unattractive scripts of adult womanhood, sexless spinster, or silently suffering wife. Now I could cash in on my sexual value according to men. Without sacrificing the future version of myself, I could become, if given the time and space, to live outside the male gaze, to grow beyond any one man's expectations of the way I should exist in relation to him and him alone. So without going too much more into this, I will say that if Kayla, and I really hope for her that, you know, while she's feeling all this right here and has all these issues with financial issues, or has the issues when it comes to trying to find her way to find love in relationships and maybe find herself emotionally healthy enough to find someone that will be there to compliment her and they have a wonderful life together, whoever that might be. That's one of those things where for her, she hopes to find it. But again, there's nothing wrong with the fact of what all she said here. There's nothing wrong with her. Kayla, in all respects, you know, there's a lot of things to appreciate about her. You know, college educated. You know, she's traveled, she's well-rounded, and I think that the kind of personality I've always read about her makes her, she's attractive, and she has a great personality about herself, and I think the fact that she's been a little more exploratory and a little more adventurous and ambitious with herself, she makes herself very interesting to get to know. Someone would be very interesting to get to understand and learn about. But then she talks about by age 25, when she started calculating gains versus losses, you know, at the end of the arrangement that she had, it turned into a relationship instead of mourning it. She had a pair of diamond studs, a strand of Sequoia pearls with matching earrings, 2 pairs of Louboutins, 1 pair of YSL heels, Yves Saint Laurent, and a large Louis Vuitton bag. Not a bad haul in exchange for a year of the use I had been conditioned to believe was all too precious and all too fleeting. I began to suspect the heart I'd put on ice at 21 hadn't healed quite right. I feared it had become overgrown with too much scar tissue. When I breathed deep, I couldn't seem to feel the bottom of my soul. Sugar babies and trad wives, she talks about. They represent 2 extremes of reactionary women under patriarchy. A Madonna whore, binary whereby one of us tries to exploit the traditional values of man-pleasing womanhood while the other cleaves to them for dramatic effect. But either way, we're both cashing in, aren't we? If there were ever a time I thought that spectrum would ever bend into a circle, those ends met and blurred when I was 24, when a sugar dating arrangement she had with a 50-year-old man turned into a relationship when he stopped paying me and started referring to himself as my boyfriend, and I was too green or too love-bombed to negotiate. This unsolicited paper promotion from sugar baby to girlfriend was a downgrade from the untethered cash flow I've been accustomed to. Sure, but I figured this was my chance to play the long game, to safely graduate from a lifestyle I was convinced I'd soon age out of. So her thing is, she is willing to go ahead and at that point maybe find love in her life, not being closed away from it. But it's also, the approach of how she met this guy, it's not going to turn into a relationship. And this guy would know that at some point he would probably let her go, because he can always, invest money and financially into the next young, beautiful woman. Because part of it is, at a 50-year-old guy would probably go and say, well, you're going to want to be with somebody else. You're not going to want to be with somebody that's twice your age. You got the rest of your life ahead of you. So one of the things that maybe helped out for her was that, that she had that direction to convert into having a boyfriend, that maybe there was something there to see what happens from it. Now, she mentions after the arrangement, a year after, it was an arrangement turned sham relationship. And in the most heterosexual unions, you will raise the curtains enough to let a man get spooked by his own shadow. I found myself wearing less makeup and blowing off press previews at pricey Manhattan rooftops to eat leftover pizza in a beautiful boy's bare bones Brighton Beach apartment. My 23-year-old self would have laughed at my 26-year-old face. You're a fucking 34-year-old who lives in the hinterlands of Brooklyn for free. You know this only ends one way, right? So that's the part that happens. Everything that comes across, she says. Young, beautiful, tried the sugar daddy route because it was means to an end. And the one thing was that she definitely wanted to go ahead and find love in her life. That the sugar daddy thing might have helped in a financial sense, but that doesn't take everything away that what she wants. And that's the part that she was dealing with. And at 25 years old, she didn't want to go ahead and be that. And then going back into situationships, because that was the next step. The decision of finding someone that's going to be a relationship, you don't want to start it off as a sugar relationship. That's not going to work. And that's where most guys understand this really well. We all understand that if we're going to spend money on a relationship, that's not going to be a long relationship. It's a situationship. It's friends with benefits. And if the benefits don't warrant the spend that we're making, then it's not worth it. Also, for the fact that it's the time we have to spend to try to make this work, that's also the part that doesn't help either. She says eventually she found herself landing back at the warm, raw bottom of her soul. She says, I don't mean to suggest that sex work makes you hard or cold. It just eventually occurred to me that it became a shield as much as a sword, yet another defense mechanism, as I hidden behind an attempt to inoculate myself against a kind of heartbreak. I was always going to catch up to me anyway. I may very well return to some form of sex work at some point in the future, either out of admitted increasing financial necessity or renewed desire. But as recently a man she told that I love in one of the many hotel rooms where we do sugar daddy things, but instead of collecting cash on the nightstand, I fall asleep in his arms feeling safe and seen for what may be the first time in my life. I don't know if I could return to that temptingly lucrative side hustle without rebuilding walls I've come to feel more trapped than protected by. They may have come around me disastrously, but only because they needed to come down one way or another. It's one of those things where there are probably more women that probably go through this kind of thing than you expect. So Kayla Kibb is not an isolated incident. She's speaking to a lot of women that probably understand this as well. They might not say it out loud, but they understand where she's coming from. There's a lot of things that are being said that make a lot of sense what she's saying. Now, Inside Hook put a story about the idea of a guide to one night stand etiquette. I thought I would take this through and see what people are going to say about this if they like the idea. Because if you are going to find any woman right now, especially in America, and you're looking to go ahead and get together with a woman that is one of these real single, young, modern women, that you have to understand that maybe you're not going to have a chance to really know if you're going to be able to get anywhere more than if you're going to get into a relationship with a woman, that maybe all you're going to get is a one-night stand or a situationship, but either which way, it's going to be from a distance. No strings attached. That's what they want. So they make a point here that about before clothes come off or lines get blurry, have a frank discussion about what you're both looking for. When it comes to dirty talk and kinkier acts, never ever assume, always ask. The golden rule for condoms, during one-night stands, put it on. And I would definitely recommend that for men. Always do that. And make sure to throw it away, throw it in the toilet, whatever you got to do, dispose of it. Do not leave it there. You don't want to go ahead and feel like if your semen's still around, and if a woman is able to get their hands on it, it's not the norm, but it's the exception, to make sure that you're not going to have anything done with what is left of what you already did in the climax. You want to make sure to throw it away. Men should always communicate what they enjoy during sex and ask their lover what they enjoy instead of assuming all people are the same. You also want to learn from the fact, but one of the things you're talking about as well. Aftercare is a great way to show that you see him as a human being, not just an object for pleasure. Yeah, cuddling, spooning, things like that. Those are some of the areas we're talking about with this here. But anyway, Kayla Kibb, as always, I love that she writes about all this. Made for a wonderful episode tonight. But I'll tell you what, one of the things for her is that I really hope that she finds love in her life, which will not be a conventional way, when that's okay. Because as I always talk about, we don't need women to go ahead and feel like, remember, I'm not going to go and recommend that a woman needs to go and become some trad wife, or that she needs to have to be married and with kids, and that's the way it's supposed to be. No, it doesn't have to be that way. You can go the route of Kayla. I say, if you want to go for it, I advocate for it. I'm saying you can go and do it all you want. That's okay. But the one thing is that I think that you can honestly say to yourself that you can go ahead and have the life that you want, live it out as much as you want, but maybe there's down the line that there's a relationship that's going to be out there for you, and that maybe you'll find that love of your life you were looking for. Maybe you'll have grown through the issues that you've gone through, the traumatic issues that you've had in your life. As Kayla said, that scar tissue, you'll heal yourself from it. Find a way to heal yourself from that trauma. But in the meantime, while you're waiting for that relationship to come into your life, maybe it'll come around sooner than later. In the meantime, Kayla's right. Nothing wrong with being a little depraved and debaucherous.